Hello humans, it's just Martine, and it's time for another episode of Kindle Clear Out. Love my Kindle dearly. It's one of my best friends. However, my Kindle library is a disaster. I have over 800 unread, owned ebooks in my Kindle library. I do not have an exact count because the problem is many of those books are bindups. So they contain more than one actual book. And in my previous episodes of Kindle Clear Out, I've pretty religiously stayed away from the bindups unless it was like a whole bindup episode that was for a bigger event like 12 TBRs. But in general, I've stayed away from the bindups, and that's not going to fly in the long run if I actually want to clear out this Kindle because many of them are bindups, so I have to face them eventually. So I thought it would be a good idea to rip off the band-aid and get started with a Kindle Clear Out Bindup Sudden Death Edition. And basically all that means is I'm going to pick bindups that are books in series, so written by the same author, and if I read the first book and I don't give it more than 3.5 stars, I get rid of the rest of the books in the series that I have, the rest of the bindup. So we'll see just how many of these Kindle books I can actually clear through in this episode. Now, if I give it more than 3.5 stars, I will keep the rest of the bindup. I will not read it in this video, but I will get to it eventually. But if I give the book 3.5 stars or lower, getting rid of the rest of them. So let's get to it. Okay, first up, I started with the Jerry Howard series, the first book of which is Kindred Crimes. The bindup that I have for this, it's one of my longer ones. There are 9 books. So either I really like this book and I keep all 9 and work through them, or I don't really love this book and I get rid of the other 8. So I read Kindred Crimes and I gave it 3 stars. So I will be getting rid of the other 8 books in this series, which is good. I mean, that's clearing out the Kindle and that's the whole point. It's not that this was a bad book. It's a mystery series, so a 3-star, it's pretty normal, I would say. In this one, we're following Jerry Howard. She's a private investigator. In this case, she is hired to try and find the wife of this man. The wife kind of took all her stuff and disappeared a couple of days ago, and he wants to know why and where she is and if she's okay and all those things. So Jerry sets out on the case, and of course everything is not what it seems, but that's the basic premise. Jerry Howard as a character was like a pretty typical female investigative character, I would say. And I feel like her focus and experience was mainly in investigation, not in like law enforcement. I'll say as far as like the evolving plot itself goes, it was fine, hence the 3 stars. There was something that like I felt like was pretty obvious as an option for a way that it could end. That is the way that it ended up going. Some pretty interesting character choices were made along the way though, in terms of like the family history of the person that we were looking for, and the fact that even though her husband first came forward and was like, can you find this person? His dad was really against them finding her. And so that was an interesting dynamic. But other than that, it was like pretty normal. And we have a cast of side characters that are clearly going to be part of the larger series. We have her ex-husband, who is a policeman. We have her best friend. They like work in the same building. Her best friend is a lawyer. I think we've been introduced to a potential love interest. He was definitely a love interest in this book. I just don't know if that would continue, but I'm not going to find out because I only gave this 3 stars. So I'm getting rid of this book, which feels a little weird because I didn't dislike this book. And so getting rid of the rest of the series seems like, I don't know, just strange because I could have a perfectly good time reading the other 8. But also I have so many books I want to prioritize. And if I'm going to be keeping books to read in the future, I want them to be books that I love. And so even though I'm like, yeah, I gave it 3 stars, had a good time, I didn't even give it a 3.5 stars, much less a 4 star. So we need to be okay with saying goodbye. And actually that's really good in this case because later in this video, I'll read bindups that are slightly smaller. And so if I unhaul them, it will be less books gone from my library. But this one takes 9 away, 1 that I've now read and 8 that were unread. I figured that would probably be the case with my like long mystery series. Most series like that are only okay to me unless I really, really love the main character. Then I might as well just hop from series to series and writer to writer to get a different experience every time. That's on that. 1 book down, 4 to go. Next up, I read The Concordia Deception, which is the first in Space Colony 1, that series. The Bindup I have has the first 3 books in it. I don't know how many are total in the series. Anyway, I read this one and I'm going to give it 3 stars, so I'm going to get rid of the rest of them. This is a pretty normal sci-fi book, I would say. We're following primarily 2 characters. One was in a cryogenically induced sleep for many, many years and then was awoken to start helping with the new colony on the new planet once they arrived. And one is called a Gen, which is one of the people who was born on the ship while it was in flight and who is meant to populate this new colony. And we kind of open on this scene where they're there to announce the name of the new planet that they are inhabiting when there's an act of terrorism and things get a little crazy. And that sets off a chain of events that leads to distrust between the Woken, those who were in cryogenic sleep and were woken up, and the Gens. And we also have this third party, the Guardians, who are a group that came later because humans back on Earth had figured out that there was going to be some terrorist activity and that there was a movement in progress. So the Guardians were sent to help protect the Gens and the Woken from the natural movement. Tensions rise between all 3 groups as they kind of grapple with one another for power over this new planet. Perfectly enjoyable read, but it's not about to be my new favorite series, and I'm totally fine not continuing with it, so I will not be. But I'm glad that I gave it a shot, and again, had a good time while I was reading it. Totally fine. So onwards and upwards. Next up, I read Kaleidoscope, which is the first book in the Vision Chronicles. I have 8 books in this series. I think it might be the complete series, all 8. And I'm getting rid of the other 7 because I gave book 1 2 stars. The premise of this, relatively interesting. We're following this guy. He's got this weird psychic ability where he can kind of see one thing at a time that's going to happen in the future, but through like a kaleidoscope formation when he closes his eyes. That's the basic setup of the story. And it's supposed to be like a romantic suspense psychic series in general. And I just had like a lot of issues with it. For one, the writing, not for me. It was a lot of telling instead of showing, and then a lot of unnecessary detail in some places and like lacking necessary details in others. For example, our main character decides he needs to learn to defend himself because people start to be after him for his ability, and so he starts training in the martial arts. That's fine. You don't need to tell me that every night before you go to sleep you visualize the moves and that helps you learn exponentially faster. Maybe you can tell me that one time, but telling me that all the time, like constantly, it's not relevant to the plot how fast you learn this. It's visualization as a technique, not relevant to the plot. I don't know why we were going on and on and on about it. It's also just, it's so strange because there's a prologue to the whole series that basically goes like his kids found his journals and they're going to read through all of them. And so each book is supposed to be like 1 or 2 of his journals, and that means that like they end at like a weird point and all of these things. I just think like realistically the journal wouldn't end at weird points. I think the way that it's written, it's weird for his kids to be reading it. Like the amount of detail about some things, weird for his kids to be reading it. Just overall, like the journal idea did not work for me. It also didn't feel like how it was written. It kind of just felt like an excuse for some like poor writing decisions, like again how abrupt the ending was. So that was frustrating. I didn't care about our characters at all, not even a little. I do want an overarching plot in a series, but I also want each book to have a plot. I either feel like this book didn't have it, or it had it but it was finished by like 70% of the way into the book, and then the rest of the book was like build up for the continuation of the series, which I don't even know that that's the right description of how it felt, but it felt like the book should end, and then it kept going until it abruptly ended somewhere else. So that was confusing, didn't like it, and I just don't care to continue with the series. So I will be getting rid of it. My Kindle will be clear of this series, and I never have to read it again. The end. At this point, I can't figure out if I'm a genius or a fool for this video concept, because I'm here to tell you about yet another book whose series I will not be continuing, and that is Legwork, which is the first book in the Casey Jones mystery series. The bind-up that I have has 6 of these, I think, and I gave this first one 2.5 stars, so I will not be continuing with the rest of them. I think there are 2 main reasons I really didn't enjoy this book. The first is that the main character and the way she talks about everything gave me the absolute ick. The way she described things, the way she thought about other people, the way she treated other people, just icky for no reason, no good reason, I feel like, and I didn't like that. And I just felt slimy reading from her perspective, but that wasn't, I don't think that was the goal. I think the goal was for her to be like funny and relatable, but instead she was just kind of like gross. Like it was trying to be funny, but it wasn't. That's how it felt. So that was my first big issue, and I've just identified a third issue actually. So first of all, issue number 2 is that I guessed the ending way before our main character figured out who done it, because at one point she's talking to a witness, and that witness gives like honestly the most bare bones description of these 2 people who were at the scene of the crime, and I was like, oh, that's this person and this person. Like very clearly those are things that the author like said in the descriptions of those characters. I was like, oh, it's this person and this person. And the main character was like, who could it be? And those people didn't even cross her mind. And when she eventually found out, I was like, yeah, no, it's that person and that person. Like, obviously. Very obviously. So that's always annoying because I don't try to guess the endings of mysteries, and I'm usually very bad at guessing them. So when I see it coming from 5 miles away, you know it's like not well done. And the third issue, which relates to the sliminess, is about our main character's status as a private investigator. So in our story, we're following our main character, and she's currently serving as the bodyguard to this lady who's running to be a senator. And she gets a call one night because in that woman's front lawn, in her car, a dead body is found. And she's like, someone's obviously trying to frame me, so figure out who it is, and I'll pay like triple your rate. Well, the problem is our main character calls herself a private investigator, but is not licensed to be a private investigator. And she makes a joke like several times about the fact that she does not actually have a license to be a private investigator. Like she's getting paid to be a private investigator, and she works in the same like office as a person who does have a license, but like that doesn't mean she has a license. She is not a licensed private investigator. And you could be like, well, there are tons of these mystery books where the main character is not licensed to do the snooping that they do. And I would totally agree. Those are accidental PI situations. They're not situations in which a person is pretending to be a licensed private investigator but actually has no license. That is totally different. One is like a main character getting into other people's business, and the other is a person lying to everyone and like breaking the law. I just had a huge problem with that. And that's just what I mean when I'm talking about like who she was as a person. That's a perfect reflection of it. Is she thought it was like funny that she got away with calling herself a private investigator, and like she would flash an ID at people when they were like, can I see your credentials? And she'd be like, here, but they weren't real. Like she didn't have actual PI credentials. That drove me crazy. So between like seeing everything coming, just the ickiness in general, including the fact that she wasn't a real private investigator but lied to everyone and said she was, I just didn't like this book. So I will not be continuing this series. The end. Those are my thoughts. Yuck. Moving on. I just finished my last book for this, which was the first book in a trilogy called The Dragon Saga. The first book was called The Priestess and the Dragon, and I'm giving it 2 stars. I will be getting rid of the other 2 books. Is this the worst one in the video? It might be. It might also be the longest one of the video because it was over 400 pages. Yeah. In this one, we're following this girl, and she's recently been sent to be a priestess to the mountain god, and on the day when she is like going to be introduced as a priestess, she goes into the place, and accidentally some weird power comes out of her and breaks the big stone, and out of it comes a dragon. And it turns out the mountain god never existed, and this thing that they thought held his essence held this dragon. And so he's like, you belong to me now, and they leave to do something. I already forget what the whole purpose was. I just didn't like it. The writing was not good. I didn't care about the characters. The plot was a little all over the place. Like, what was the point? That was rough. And I did have an inkling that I might be in for a rough time when I read the dedication at the start of the book, because it was dedicated to this author's readers on Wattpad. And I don't think that everything ever written on Wattpad is bad. You know, I think people have found gems, but I don't think this is one of them. I think this is a very typical Wattpad fantasy read. And so it was just a rough time to get through. I had trouble paying attention to the writing. There were so many action sequences for no reason and like so randomly. For example, this was in the latter half of the book, but they go to this place to get our main character more training because she has this power, but she doesn't really know how to use it. So they go to get her training. She never gets training. Instead, she just has a big fight when she gets there, and then they move on to something else. And I'm like, wait, but you went there to go get training. And I was excited about that because I feel like training situations during fantasies can be pretty interesting and cool. You learn more about the magic. I like the setting of like a school or training ground, but instead we went there, we fought, and then we left. Why? For what reason? And that's kind of how the whole book felt to me. Is like we went somewhere, we did something for no good reason, and we left. And we did that all over the place. And it feels like we only really got to like the point at the very end, obviously to set up for the rest of the series. And it's just a point I don't care about because I don't care about these characters. I don't care what happens to them. And so I don't care about their quest to find these different parts of something and put them all back together. Don't care. I also feel like the villain of the story was introduced very late. Like, we don't realize until the very end who the villain is, which is weird. So again, it's an issue of like, what's the point of all these things we're doing? So yeah, didn't like it. We'll be getting rid of the rest of the series. Feel like I fell flat on my face with this one. So obviously we cleared through a lot of books because there is not a single bind-up that I read that I'm going to be continuing this series for, which I'm of two minds about. On the one hand, great for my Kindle library. On the other hand, sad, because I didn't have the best luck with the books that I read in this. I feel like it really went rapidly downhill. And I'd also like to point out that it's funny to me, upon reflecting on this whole experience, that I gave a better rating to the Casey Jones book than The Priestess and the Dragon, because I was so angry about that book in my review of it. But I think that just goes to show how much I'm not a fantasy reader. Bad fantasy, there's nothing worse for me. A bad mystery, still above a bad fantasy, even if it makes me really angry. So that was interesting to learn about myself. Out of these books, I read 5, but how many are leaving my library in total? Well, I added it all up, and I'm pretty sure if my math is correct, it's 30. Because I had 9 Jerry Howard books, 8 Vision Chronicle books, 7 Casey Jones books, 3 Dragon Saga books, and 3 Space Colony 1 books. So 30 books leaving. Of course, the count that it shows of unread on my Kindle library is only going down by 5 because the Kindle library does not count the books that are in the bind-up. But I'm working on a solution to know just how many books are in my Kindle library. It's just going to take some time for that to happen. So anyway, 30 books out the door. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up and comment down below how should I choose my next Kindle books to clear out, and subscribe for more bookish and college lifestyle content. And until next time, bye humans, bye!